Yeah, yesterday it was weird when I recorded. The video wasn't working. I had the audio, but hopefully this picks up. Okay. So, guys, I mentioned yesterday we're going to go through a situation with what are called bank failures. Okay. Do you remember what these were from yesterday? Anybody remember what those were? What kind of loan is that?
They're loaning money for them to get all the stock market.
Mm-hmm. For people to spend to invest in the stock market. Okay. So this is going to be one of the factors leading to the bank failures. Okay, which is on the next slide. All right. So there are several factors here, but they all culminate with the issue of a lack of cash. Okay, so you guys, Boosting, you live in Colwich, right?
Yep.
All right, this is great because I talked about Colwich twice today. All right. So if you lived in Colwich in 1930, likely there was probably one bank. Yeah, there's one bank. Okay, yeah. So people that lived there would bank with that bank. What's the name of the bank?
Legacy Bank.
Legacy Bank. Okay. So all the people that live in Colwich bank at Legacy. So their savings accounts are used to loan money to other people in the community, farmers and such, to borrow money. Okay. And then because you get some interest on your savings account, right? So it's kind of like a community bank, and they don't keep all the cash in the bank, right? Like if you had $100,000 in your bank account, you're like, I'd like to close my account and get my money. You're gonna say, you have to wait a few hours while we get that cash here because we don't have it at the bank. You know what I mean? So as I walk you through this, by the way, guys, this is something you're probably going to need to write about on the test, okay, to describe how bank failures happen. So foreign deposits, remember, holy smoot, guys, within 17 months, trade was cut in half. So with all the money that passes through our banks, when there's trade, you got the importers bringing goods in, and then their money will pass through our banks, and then the exports money will pass through our banks. Okay, and so with trade cut in half, those foreign deposits, and even the deposits of American businesses that are exporting, slow. So there's not near as much cash in the banks because of the slow and foreign deposits. Farmers, we just looked at farm prices. Okay, bushel of wheat drops almost 40%. A pound of cotton, more than half. So farmers are in trouble. And so when they couldn't pay back their loans for farm machinery, they couldn't pay back their loans that they had gotten to buy seed, to plant. These rural banks are in trouble. Okay, then think about, so let me walk you through this. Okay. When the stock market collapsed and people had borrowed money from the banks to invest in the stock market, and that money doesn't get paid back to the banks have less what? When farmers can't pay their loans back because crop prices have fallen, the banks are going to have less cash. When people lose their jobs, and remember, in 1928, we owed $1 billion on automobiles. Think about the mortgages, people's homes that they can't pay. And when people can't pay back their loans for mortgages or automobiles, the banks have less cash. And when people find out that the banks are short on cash, people run to the banks to get out their cash. And the banks run out of cash. And they shut their doors. Okay? Explain that. Now, this is called a run on banks. So, 659 659 and 1929. These are mostly rural. Okay, like in Coleridge. Okay, as the Depression starts to fully go into effect, you see this is going to spread. Okay, by the end, 1/4 of all banks will close, and 9 million people will lose their savings account. Once the banks close, guys, they don't reopen. There's no insurance on your money. There's no federal FDIC. Okay, so this is tragic for people. All right, so this will take us forward. Okay, after we get through the bank failures, which could you use this as a cause of the Great Depression? It's more of a effect of the Great Depression. You know what I mean? The depression causes these bank failures. Now they will make the depression worse. Okay. By the way, guys, yesterday, remember when I was talking about your emotions as you go through the investing process? Like you put money in and you're optimistic and then you're euphoric and then it starts to go down. You get anxiety, depression, this is why I don't watch the stock market every day, right? That's what I said. Well, I didn't mean to watch the stock market yesterday, but I couldn't help it because it was all over the news. Does anybody know what happened on the stock market yesterday?
Dow Jones dropped like
Over 3%, almost 4%. The Dow Jones dropped 1,200 points, 1,240 points yesterday. It was all over the news. Now, something's going wrong here, people, because I got one person in here that heard about it. What does that tell me? That you're living in a bubble. You live in a little bubble. And what happens outside that bubble, you're not aware of. Unless it's on TikTok or Instagram. I know you guys are on Instagram. You're not on Instagram?
Neither.
Huh? Neither one. Twitter? Nothing. Yeah. You? No Instagram? Everybody else Instagram? No. Twitter? Okay. Get your phones out. Now, you guys don't have to go on Twitter or Instagram. What you can do is go to your app store. Okay? Now, I'm going to give you some options here. Because, guys, you can't trust one news source. So, on Instagram or Twitter, you need to follow CNN and Fox News. Okay? You're going to get both sides there. Okay? Don't put that away yet. Oh, you can't do that. Okay. So you guys that have apps, download the app, a news app. Just download a news app. Click on it while you're taking a dookie. Just read the headlines. Okay, if you follow Twitter, okay, you got CNN, Fox. Okay, now if you want left-wing news, like hardcore left-wing, follow BuzzFeed. If you want conservative news, follow Breitbart. Okay. Another good news app is called Drudge Report. This website receives over 24 million hits a day. Drudge Report. Okay. A lot of people get their news from Drudge. You can do Yahoo News, all different sort of things. But if you put it in your Instagram feed or your Twitter feed, guys, it'll pop up. And you will be exposed to things outside your bubble in the news. Okay? it's kind of important. There's a lot of crap going on. Yesterday, Joe Biden was having an event at the White House where he was celebrating the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. The news on inflation, the inflation numbers for July came out yesterday morning. Most experts were expecting inflation to stay flat or go down. That was not the case. Inflation rose in July. Not a lot, but it's still going up. The stock market reaction to that was to drop almost 4%. So year to date, we looked at it yesterday, it was down 7%. Now year to date, the stock market is down over 10%. So your parents and I lost over 3% of our 401ks yesterday. Because inflation is continuing to rise, ladies and gentlemen, the government is trying to get the economy to slow down to control inflation. The best tool that they have is interest rates. So over the last few months, interest rates have continued to rise. News yesterday of inflation continuing to rise told the markets that the Federal Reserve is going to raise interest rates a full point. So people that are borrowing money are going to be paying more. Businesses that are borrowing money are going to pay more, which means there's going to be a slowdown in the economy, which is reflected on the stock market. Following me. Now, which is worse, inflation or a dropping stock market? It depends who you are. For me, inflation stinks. If your parents owe money on their house still, they're still paying on their mortgage, inflation is not such a bad thing. So say your parents borrowed $100,000 to buy a house. They got the interest rate locked in, hopefully around 3.5%, 4%. Inflation takes place, wages tend to rise, which we've seen over the last year. Wages going up, which means you have more dollars in your hands. What is the value of the money today versus what it was yesterday? It's lower. So the money that your parents are paying back to the bank is worth less than when they borrowed it, and they have access to more of those dollars because wages are going up. Following me? So inflation makes it easier to pay your debts. In the next chapter, guys, we're going to be talking about deflation, which is worse than inflation. Okay? Now, deflation for me right now would not be as bad because that would increase the value of the dollar. But most Americans are in debt. Okay? My wife and I just paid off our house a couple of months ago. So that's good. But if somebody wants to buy a house today, their interest rate's going to be higher than it was 6 months ago, a lot higher. So basically, the government has to try and put us into a recession to bring on inflation under control. That's what's going on. Okay? Does that make sense to you guys? So, there's lots of stuff going on. Ukraine. Ukrainians are pushing back the Russians right now. That's a big deal. If Russia gets pushed back into a corner, how will they respond to that? And then there's China. The Trump investigations, all the stuff going on. Okay. Lots going on in the world. Now, I know politics can be depressing, boring, and so forth. Sometimes you got to turn it off. Okay? Sometimes I got to turn it off. Now's not the time to turn it off. Now's the time to be paying attention. Okay? Like after an election, I'm like, okay, I'm done. Turning it off for a while. paid way too much attention. Come on. Stupid computer. Okay, good. All right, guys, we're going to sink into this depression. Have you seen this picture before? It's pretty much in every history textbook made in the last 50 years, okay? This is a Pulitzer Prize winning photograph. You know, they say, picture tells 1,000 words. Okay, this is the picture that's used to encapsulate the Depression. It's labeled migrant worker, okay? I took a class in graduate school called Advanced Historical Research Methods. We had to pick a famous photograph and research it, okay? Of course, I picked a baseball picture of the baby. Another Pulitzer Prize winning photo. What's going through her mind? You know, I mean, like, how did we get here? How am I going to feed my kids? Where do I go next? These sorts of things. So when factories started to slow down, you had more people laid off. Those people lost their jobs. They could not afford to pay their debts, could not afford to buy products. So the economy just kept spiraling downward, okay? And we would fall into a severe economic depression. Guys, I'm not concerned at this point that this is going to happen again, okay? I think the Federal Reserve raising interest rates will do the trick. But guys, we've seen this game before. So when Reagan took office in 1981, guys, we had super high inflation. And so his Fed secretary, Federal Reserve chair, is a guy named Paul Volcker. He's famous because he's going to get us out of that inflation, but it's going to take 4 to 5 years to get out of this inflation. I don't know if it'll take this long because, guys, food prices year to date are up 11.4% in this country. Housing prices are up 6.5%. This is making it difficult for people, okay? Polling shows that about half the population has said they've had to change their behavior. They're driving less. They're not taking the vacation they were hoping to take. Guys, I just got on, I use an app for booking stuff, booking.com, because I'm going to Chicago, right? Oh, God. I went to rent a car for 3 days. O'Hare has like 3 cars available. $1,000 a day to rent a car. I just texted my wife. I said, looks like I'm Ubering this weekend. So to go from O'Hare to the hotel where Lily's team is staying, the suburb, would be $108. Now that's cheaper than $1,000. So I'm trying to figure this all out. Trying to find a VRBO near Wrigley Field for Thursday night, tomorrow night, right? Tomorrow night. I'll Uber from the airport to Wrigleyville, stay in a VRBO, found one for $200. Take an Uber to the stadium, get an Uber from the stadium to the suburb, and stay there for 2 days, and take an Uber back to the airport. And I think I can do that for under $1,000. Dude, the car rentals industries, and I mean, like the one we rented last week when we were in Houston, it had 39,000 miles on it. Used to be when you rented a car, like it had like 1,000 miles. So like, there's not enough cars, supply chain issues. And oh, by the way, did you hear that railroad workers, 60,000 of them, are threatening to go on strike? There's 3 days to resolve this strike. You want to talk about supply chain issues? Most cars that are delivered in this country are delivered by rail. This won't be good. They're saying about $2 billion. It'll cost about $2 billion to the economy every day the railroad is shut down. It's already costing because they stopped delivering hazardous materials, things that you don't just want to leave sitting on the track. So they stopped delivering that kind of stuff in case there's a strike. Generally for better pay, better benefits. Third time for a pay raise, like the teachers in Seattle who are on strike. Okay. New York Times asked their 1,300 employees to come back to the office because they've been working from home ever since the pandemic. Like 1,300 of them are refusing to go back to the office. Yeah, see, that's the stuff, you know, when you pull up the news, you get that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? That's going to affect us, right? Gas prices went up 20 cents yesterday. Why? Anybody know why? I don't know. Supply and demand. Okay? Prices have been coming down because people are driving less. So there's more supply. I don't know why it went up. Something's going on. Russia. Ukraine. Okay. Europe's in trouble. Europe's going to have a cold winter, man. Go green before you're ready to go green. We need to build some freaking in this country. Like 50. Just do like 50. Let's put some of that $773 billion that we're going to spend because the Inflation Reduction Act. What causes inflation? Printing more money. So the Inflation Reduction Act is going to spend $700 billion. It's almost funny if it wasn't so sad. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Unemployment. Okay. This is about 25% of people that are working age unemployed. Okay. Many who did so only had part-time. Let me talk to Colwich again. There's one grocery store in Colwich. Don't say the name. Anybody else know the name of that store? Kraus. Just Kraus, right? Kraus Foods. Okay. Now, let's say prior to the Depression, there were 10 full-time employees at Kraus. Okay. The Depression hits. People stop spending money. They're buying less from Kraus Grocery. Okay. So Kraus is going to have to lay off half their workforce. They don't want to do that because the people that work for them are their neighbors. Everybody in Colwich knows everybody. You know, the Quainies and the Georges, and everybody knows each other. You don't want to lay these people off completely. They're not going to be able to feed their kids. So instead of laying off half the employees at Kraus, they make all 10 part-time. So the 25% unemployment or 12 million doesn't tell the whole story. Now, you may not be able to pay your mortgage, part-time work. So, but you'll have enough money to feed your kids, type of thing. Any guys ever see the movie Cinderella Man? Okay, this is one of the best movies that portrays the Depression. Okay, what it was like for people. Okay, I mean, there's others. Some of the girls were talking about in like fourth grade, you guys watched a doll movie or something. It was an American Girl movie or something. Maybe you don't know. They were talking about it. I'd never heard of it. You heard of The Grapes of Wrath, the book or the movie, The Grapes of Wrath? Okay, it's famous American literature. I used to show it in class, and half my students would be asleep within 10 minutes. So I quit showing it, okay? But the Cinderella Man's about it's a true story based on a guy named Jim Braddock. He's a heavyweight boxer, and actually was the champion before the Depression hit. Then he broke his hand, which you need if you're a boxer. So he can't fight. I mean, he tries to fight, but he can't. It's killing him, and then he can't find work. So this strong, masculine guy, who's a heavyweight championship, now is having trouble feeding his family, keeping a roof over their head. Okay, Renee Zellweger is his wife. I can't remember the actor's name. He's a beautiful mind, master and commander. What's that guy's name? But anyhow, it's a really good movie, and it kind of shows you the impact here. So, like, people that lost their homes, and that was a lot of people, guys. This is the biggest tragedy of the Depression is homelessness. Okay, so when people are kicked off their homestead or evicted from their homes, they wind up in what are called Hoovervilles. They're like little shanty towns. People get scraps of wood and so forth and build them a little hut. This is Central Park in New York City. There was a large Hooverville there. They would set up these shanty towns on public lands, in public parks, okay? And so when you see this, if you go to San Francisco today or Los Angeles today, huge homeless problem. Portland, Oregon, huge homeless problem, okay? And so these Hoovervilles, and you got to like the fact that they name them after the president, okay? These homeless camps. Guys, this is a situation, what historians refer to as democratic malaise. Guys, many people feel that capitalism has failed us. Democracy has failed us. The system is broke. And so people will start turning to more radical ideas like communism and fascism. So in these camps, it's a hotbed for radicalism. You see riots, you see food riots, okay? Marriage ring. People can't afford to start a family. People can't afford to go to college, okay? And many will be hungry. So this is going to lead to some negative effects in society. I have a mouse now. Let's go. So you will see violence. You will see hunger strikes. You will see looting. People breaking into grocery stores and stealing the food and that sort of thing. It's really sad because, people, have been paying on this mortgage for years, lose their job, they can't pay their mortgage, the bank evicts them, and if you get 2 weeks to move out, and if you don't leave, they call the sheriff. They're forcibly going to remove you. And as they do that, they're going to remove your belongings in the house. They're going to put them on the front stoop of the house. And they're going to hold an auction. And people are going to come by and buy your stuff really cheap. And then they're going to send you on your way. Where are you going to go? Probably going to wind up in a Hooverville. If you don't have somebody like another family member that you can stay with, this sort of thing, things get bad. Okay, that's why that movie Cinderella Man. All this stuff happens to the family. Okay, kids are sick. You don't have heat. Can't turn on the electric. You don't have enough money. Between 1930 and 1934, guys, we will lose 1 million family farms. Now, how many people do you think lived on the average family farm in 1930? Give me a, like, you got mom and pop, you're gonna have kids, right? So you gotta have labor. You need somebody to milk the cows so you have kids, right? You need free labor. Right? It's about survival, right? You need workers. And if they're free, that's better. You gotta feed them. You got grandma, grandpa, maybe? They started the farm. Maybe the sister that never married, the aunt. So conservatively, I think you could say, what, 7 people? That's 7 million people. Where are these people going to go? Now, if you read the Grapes of Wrath, you would believe they all went to California. Now, guys, there's no dust in California like there is in the Midwest. Many do go to California. There are some jobs out there. You know, picking fruit, working in the fields, picking vegetables. But those jobs get taken pretty quick. So most of these people wind up going to the cities. Okay? So you take a city like Wichita, Kansas, when the Depression is in, and you got somebody from Missouri. They're fleeing Missouri, they're heading west. They show up in Wichita. We don't have any jobs in Wichita. All the jobs are taken. So if you show up in Wichita, you're just another mouth to feed. We don't want you here. You need to move along. Fill up your gas tank and move along. Because what people would do, guys, first thing they would do is sell their furniture. Sell anything of value. They would hold on to their cars. Because if you lost the roof over your head, at least you had a vehicle you could sleep in. So it was not uncommon to see people driving down Route 66 going west, loaded down with all their belongings on their car. They show up in a town, they are not welcome there. Because there are no jobs in this town. So there was violence against migrants. People jumping on trains. Just like, I'm in debt, I can't pay my bills, I lost my job, there's nothing, I lost my house, nowhere to go. You hop on a train. You know? And then a lot of people started doing that. So they hired these people to make sure that people weren't riding the trains. They would beat you with a club. They caught you on the train. Okay? You'll see this in the video on Friday. So, I mean, this is, you know, it's bad. Then, guys, you have all these veterans. Remember the bonus bill, the Adjusted Compensation Act. This was, you could cash that in 1945. Well, guys, it's 1932. You have all these unemployed veterans. And there's a member of Congress that says, you know what, we need to help these veterans. We need to send them all $500. So 20 to 25,000 of these veterans marched to Washington in support of this legislation to give them $500. Do these people have money to stay in a hotel? No. So they actually open up the Capitol building to let them sleep. They bring them food. Then the vote comes for this bill to give them $500, and it doesn't pass. So Hoover says, sorry, guys, you need to go away. You need to go home. Well, most of them left. A lot of them didn't have anywhere to go. So they just stayed. Like 2,500 of them stayed in Washington. And there's an empty lot built to Hooverville. Now, as I said, there's some radical ideas going on in these camps. There's some riots going on. And after a while, Hoover's like, these people need to leave. They need to get out of here. They're causing problems. So Hoover calls in 12th Infantry, the U.S. Army, drive these veterans of the Army. So he's calling in the Army against veterans of the Army. Tanks, cavalry on horseback, bayonets. There's going to be a riot. They come in and they burn the shanty town to the ground. People are going to die. This is what it ends up looking like. You can see the Capitol in the background. Now, in charge of the 12th Infantry at the time was a guy named Douglas MacArthur, and his aide, Dwight Eisenhower. Okay, probably not one of their proudest moments. I got a video.
Americans, already tired of Hoover's pessimistic and cautious approach, then became outraged by his treatment of a group of World War I veterans in 1932. After the war, Congress issued veterans bonus certificates for their military service worth nearly $1,000 to be redeemed in 1945. Dismayed by the economic outlook of the time, the veterans demanded the immediate payment of their bonuses in full. In an attempt to satisfy their demand, Texas Congressman Wright Patman proposed a bill in which the government would immediately give veterans $500 in cash instead. To show their support of Patman's plan, between 10 and 20,000 veterans and their families peacefully marched to Washington, D.C. This so-called bonus army established a shanty town inside the Capitol building. Hoover provided food and supplies for them, but when Congress vetoed the bill on June 17, he asked the bonus army to leave. Most left, but approximately 2,000 stayed behind, hoping to meet with Hoover. During a riot, Hoover ordered General Douglas MacArthur and the 12th Infantry Force to remove the veterans. Shocked Americans saw troops use bayonets and tear gas to force the vets to leave. In a melee, more than 1,000 people were gassed, an 8-year-old boy blinded, and an 11-month-old baby was killed. The shantytown burned to the ground. Public support for Hoover foundered, and with a chance to change direction, Americans overwhelmingly embraced a new president in Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Okay. So, guys, the dislike of Hoover is very high. So, really, he has no chance of winning the next election. But we're not done with Hoover yet. But this is really going to cement his fate. Guys, it's rare to see this. In fact, I can think of no other time in American history after we wrote the Constitution that this has happened. I mean, obviously the British, did it at Lexington and Concord, but that was the British. Guys, you're not supposed to use the U.S. Army on domestic soil. Now, you can use the National Guard, and every state has a National Guard. Okay, and the governor gets to call them out if there's, a riot or a natural disaster, something like that. Okay, now, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Kent State University in Ohio. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Kent State Massacre in 1971. Guys, this is the Vietnam era. So there were Vietnam protests taking place on college campuses all over the United States. Kent State was no different. And these protests at times have become kind of violent. And so the chancellor of the school and the governor of Ohio said, look, no more protests at Kent State. Well, you tell people they can't protest, well, there's still something called the First Amendment. Right? So people are going to show back up and protest. And so the National Guard was called in. Now, these protesters are 18, 19, 20, young 20s, right? The National Guardsmen are 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. And so this protest takes place. The National Guard comes in. They use tear gas. And then the protesters start throwing the tear gas back at the National Guardsmen. And one of the National Guardsmen opened fire. And then another opened fire. Hearing those shots. Before it was done, 9 people had been shot on the college campus of Kent State. 4 of them would die. Okay? This is a tragedy. Okay? Neil Young wrote a song about it. 4 dead in Ohio. A song called Ohio. 10 soldiers in. I can't sing. Yeah, so Neil Young's song about it. Okay? Neil Young wrote a lot of protest songs. I don't know if you've ever heard Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Crosby, Stills, and Nash? Okay. What is wrong with your parents? Okay. Young is Neil Young. Fabulous artist. But he wrote a lot of political music. Okay. He wrote a song called Southern Man, where he criticizes people in the South for being racist. Okay. Then Leonard Skinner wrote a song in response to Neil Young's Southern Man called Sweet Home Alabama. So there's a part in that song where they say, Neil Young, Southern Man don't need you around anyhow. Okay. Which one sold more records? Sweet Home Alabama. Okay. So Leonard Skinner wins. But no, I mean, it's politics, you know. This just doesn't happen. Not supposed to happen in the United States. You understand? So, all right, moving forward. Time we get out of here? 55? 50? Okay. All right, let's get these notes in and let's write them down, and I'll let you write them down. I can talk about them pretty quickly. Click on this. Maybe this is why the video didn't show up.
Teachers, again, I'm sorry for the interruption. We're getting ready for lunch. This is an announcement for all freshman boys in Coach Hughes's 4th hour PE class. You will go straight to the library when the bell rings for 4th hour, and you will eat 3rd lunch today. All 4th hour Mr. Hughes's boys will eat 3rd lunch today and go straight to the library when the bell rings. Thank you.
Guys, when you hear public works, I want you to think government, like public schools, government schools, public parks, government parks, okay? And works are jobs. Okay, these are government jobs. So you've all heard of Hoover Dam? Okay, it was called Boulder Dam. Construction here, $2 billion building stuff, putting people to work. Okay, did we have bulldozers by the 1930s? Okay, so bulldozers could have done the work of these men. These men wanted work. No work was beneath people. You understand? Like, people were struggling. So they were willing to take jobs that they were way overqualified for. Okay, and there's dignity in that work. They just wanted to provide for their families. Okay, so this is a Band-Aid. This is not going to bring us out of the depression. It's going to help people that are struggling. This is going to loan money to businesses. If businesses can stay afloat, then people will still have jobs. And then this one, the tragedy of homelessness. Now, what is a mortgage? Mortgage is a loan for a what? For a home. So we're going to loan people money to pay their loans. I didn't say it made sense. It's a Band-Aid. So if this keeps a roof over your head for 6 months or a year, then you're going to do it. You know what I mean? So these are some of the things. But remember, loans. He's not going to give you something for nothing. Okay. All right. Stop.